Hello and welcome to Stylish Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I'm chatting to Edd Fury. Edd's a photographer and director based in the West Midlands, and we actually connected because of Fran, the retoucher, I think. I think she slung us both ways, didn't she? She was like, you guys need to chat.
Yeah, she did, I think.
She's retouched some bits for you, hasn't she?
Yeah, so I've done quite a lot of work with Fran over the years, but less so recently, and that's just sort of down to client budgets, really. Everything's just felt a lot tighter the past, 18 months. So, but yeah, hopefully there'll be something that pops up where we can work together again soon. So.
Yeah, I feel like I do understand the client budgets recently have just gotten tighter and tighter and tighter. And since COVID, they definitely have got tighter. I don't know if you felt like that.
I mean, I had quite a good time of it in COVID because obviously I'm a still life photographer, so I've got my own studio. Although I was based in Bristol at that point, so I've relocated since. But people would just send me stuff and I could just get on with it on my own in the studio. There was no social distancing or anything like that to consider. But yeah, since what's been going on in Ukraine has been a catalyst for things have slowed down and budgets have got tighter, and then there's just been a slippery slope since there. But I don't want to get into that too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of budgets and sort of creative work, it certainly felt a tricky 18 months.
Yeah, I feel you. It feels very similar, and especially just before budgets come out again in April, stuff always gets a little bit quieter, and you have to fill your time, don't you?
Yeah, February and March I always find is a quiet time. So I guess a good thing to do is just work on personal projects and update your website, because that's always the last thing you ever do. You always put paying work and other things first. So it's always a good time to look for new prospects and update work and shoot something for yourself. That's why we all got into what we do, is because we love it. You monetize it, and then suddenly it's about feeding the machine, paying the bills. So it's really nice just to take a little time back for yourself sometimes when it's quiet as well.
Yeah, I've seen your recent passion projects as well with your florals and stuff. They're really nice.
Yeah, I guess that's about 2 years old, that idea, 3 years old maybe. It's something I've just sat on, but I've never quite hit it where it's always been, a project I wanted to do when we were coming out of winter into spring, that sort of turning point of dead stuff that sort of survived the winter is now fading away. There's new growth, blossom and all that. I love this time of year where you can just see everything just starting to turn green, I guess, and empty trees suddenly are flooded with flowers and stuff like that. So time just kind of lined up this year for that. And then because we moved, we got a new garden, and there was just I didn't really get to do much before winter in terms of cutting stuff back. So it was just okay, well, this is perfect. There's still all this stuff kicking around. So, like poppy heads and old flower heads and stuff like that, as well as we've got a fruit tree down at the end of the garden. So I took a bit of blossom off that as well. So all of the stuff out of that came from the garden, which was kind of nice. And even the bits of old grain, which were just under the hedge at the very bottom, because there's a field at the back. And last year they grew, I don't know what it was, barley or wheat or something. But yeah, a few little bits of that were just tucked under the hedge. So I saw them earlier on in the winter and thought, are they going to survive? Shall I get them now? But I left them because they were quite sort of hidden under the hedge. So I went outside with a pair of kitchen scissors and snipped it all, and then brought it in the studio. And that's, yeah, it was really nice, actually. I think, I don't really know if it did what I wanted it to, but I think really I just wanted it to sort of look as though it was just swaying gently in the breeze, and using multiple exposures of flash blacked the studio out as well for that. So there was no continuous light or anything like that. So it was just flash. And then just sort of did I think a burst of 6 flashes before moving it, and then 3. So there was always this consistency of how many multiples there were on the exposure. But yeah, I think it looked all right, I think it
Yeah,
looked all right. I was pretty pleased with it anyway.
I liked it. And I think sometimes you've got to have that sense of play, especially when we're conforming to other people's briefs and stuff. So it's quite
Yeah.
nice to do something that you are free to roam around, and you might find something that actually you can use then further down the line for clients too.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know how many people will have seen it on Instagram, but it's quite a long caption I put underneath, and I sort of touched on how it was really nice just to be shooting something with organic. So the background is just 100% cotton sheet as well. Obviously, the stuff came out of the garden, so everything there is essentially organic matter. Although the cotton sheets been processed and all that, but no plastic. And what I do all the time involves so much plastic, so much disposable packaging and stuff like that. Being a sort of freelance product photographer, essentially, and still life, I generally call myself, but there's just so much plastic everywhere. So it was really nice actually not to have plastic everywhere and conforming to what we deem as a good photograph where everything's sharp, to have those sort of exposures of the plant moving as well. I think that worked really nicely.
Yeah, I really liked it. And I think you're right. There's so much plastic in our job because we're shooting. I'm the same as you. I'm a still life stylist. So I only deal in product and props. So I couldn't think of the word then. And you just end up like unpackaging stuff, or like you
Yeah,
give them packages that you've then got to try and make look nice, because sometimes they do look like they're falling off the back of the lorry.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you've
So,
just so much plastic. And, I'm forever grateful that my job is so creative and fun, but then there is that environmental side as well.
yeah, 100%. I mean, what we do is innately for clients to sell more stuff. So I guess sometimes I end up feeling conflicted because I am conscious of the way the world is, and what we're leaving for future generations is it just seems to be piles of single-use plastic at the minute. So I am conscious of that, and it is a little bit of a conflicting point, I suppose, of what I do against the future of our planet for generations to come, and how that impacts. But then I think there's it's not just the onus is on us, is it? It should be on the brands who do it as well to find a more sustainable way of working.
Yeah. And I think often, I don't know about you guys, but I buy a lot secondhand. It's rare I buy stuff new. Like, there's just other ways you can be sustainable without it affecting your work, I guess, as well. Like, everyone's got to work and earn money to have room
Yeah,
in their head, haven't they? So,
yeah, but like you as well, I think particularly with home stuff, or certainly my wife likes to dip in and out of charity shops and upcycle a bit of stuff as well, and that's the stuff that's got a bit of quirkiness and character to it as well. So I think particularly being creative people, your home space should kind of reflect you as well. And I feel like having those quirky bits and bobs. I mean, we all can't avoid the IKEA stuff here and there, can we?
no.
But it's nice to give something or repurpose something and give it a new life. But whether that's old furniture that you paint like a really mad purple or something that and it's just a bit of a better reflection of yourself, I think, as well.
Yeah, and I think you have your own kind of culture in your houses as well, don't you? It's like me and my husband have a lot of like tattoo prints, and there's a lot of pictures printed out. And because I'm a very visual person, and he's got all his like video game bits, and like you build
Yeah,
your own culture around the things that you like. And then when you're creative as well, often I'll say to him, "Shall we paint this?" A really, to him, radical color, but to me is just like a brilliant color. And he's like, they get him to paint it, and he's like, yeah, all right, I see your point now.
yeah. I think ours is Americana. Really, that's kind of, well, that's certainly my advice. Is I mean, we did have a neon sign in our old dining room, but we didn't win the fight on that one anymore.
Oh
But
no.
well, it did say diner on it as well, so it kind of suited. But yeah, we don't have a neon sign in our house anymore. But yeah, we got photographs from trips that either I've done with work or we've been on together, and it's just like old neons and nice Americana stuff. Just love that sort of stuff. So I guess that's our vibe.
Yeah, it's reminded me of me and Nath went to Amsterdam recently, and near the Straat Museum, the Graffiti Museum, there's another exhibition space, and they're one of the artists, and I cannot remember their name, but they got loads of the neon kind of signs, like diner signs, and made it into like one big sculpture, and it was absolutely incredible. And I just stood there just looking at it like open mouth, just like, wow, this is so cool. And it was like, I don't know, 15 foot tall. It was huge. And I was just like, oh my God, like looking at all the lights going and all the different shapes and like the rust on stuff and just so much to look at.
That's what fascinates me, is that like the patina that these things, they've been out in the desert for, since the 50s or whatever, and they're still there. Some of them work, some of them are just abandoned, but the way they've aged is kind of cool. And, I love that. I kind of think it's a bit of a shame we don't do stuff like that over here, but then, probably wouldn't be obsessed with it then if we did. If you're just walking down your high street and there's neons everywhere, it's probably not the same, is it?
No.
So, and I think that's one of the great shames anyway about the way American culture's going, is that they're just ripping a lot of them out as well. So I think when we go there, I always go with the intention of finding some and shooting some, but it is getting harder to find them. Sometimes the best ones, you might drive in somewhere and just turn the corner and bang, it's there. And, you haven't found anything on Google about it or anything like that, but it's just there, and that's those little unexpected moments, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what the best part of life is, though, isn't it? Finding those little unexpected moments and the little moments of joy, and you're like, oh yeah, that's just like.
Certainly, as you get older, I think.
Yeah.
It's normally something money can't buy, isn't it? Those little things you think about afterwards. You think, God, that was fucking great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's an age thing, isn't it? I think definitely once you've got past 30, I think it's when you start to appreciate things like that a lot more.
Yeah, I think because you're not chasing the expectations of everybody else around you, you're just getting on with being you.
Yeah, I think there's less desire to find approval, I think.
Yes, yeah, I think you've just worded that way better than what I did then. My brain today, honestly. So did you study at university or anything, or college, or?
Yeah, so I did both. I went to art college, which seems like an age ago. So between 2006 and 2008 is art college. Kind of went with the thought of being a graphic designer. And, the old cliches of I picked up a camera and, never looked back kind of thing. And then I went on to study commercial photography up in Derby at the university there. They had a specialist course. So they had a photography course, but they ran a commercial photography course alongside of it. So I did that. And then while I was a student, I began assisting, and that's kind of been my route into the industry, really. So by the time I left university, 2014, I think I left. I had a couple of years out between college and uni. But then when I left, I think it was a pretty seamless transition from, leaving education and stepping straight into the industry.
So you found assisting really helped with that? Because I think I've spoken to people who just did uni and then got a photography job. I've chatted to people who didn't go to uni, just did assisting, but you've done a mixture of both, and that seems to have done you in good stead.
Yeah, I mean, I always found while I was at uni that they wanted me to be there more, but then they also wanted to. When I was there, I won an award with a London agent, and it was my own work. It was nothing to do with work done on university time. But when I won this, and they were really keen on using it as like this poster thing for the course, and I'm like, well, it's not really anything to do with that. So I always had a bit of a conflict with university, that they wanted me to be there more, which I guess is just a percentages thing for them. But the reality was that I was out there doing the work, and it was like, well, you should be pushing them to do this. You should be pushing everyone to go and get the experience. And so that was a bit of a tricky balance. But I think, well, I just don't think anyone gives a shit if you've got a degree or not. Ultimately, it's, are you good at lighting and, all of that with photography, particularly with still life, but it's a doing job, not a thinking and theorizing job. I mean, it can be, but more in your own personal projects is when you can theorize and bring in these influences from 100 years ago or whatever that they like you to look at university. So I don't think it's necessary to have studied a degree in photography to be a photographer. I do recommend assisting, mainly because you work with, I certainly worked with a lot of photographers over the years, and you just see a multitude of ways of solving problems from different people, and you just subconsciously pick stuff up from them, and it's the best way of learning, And I always say it's not majorly often I'll use assistants, unless it's a big job, and then I do. Or I'll try and use assistants on as many jobs as I can, but again, that goes down to budget sometimes. But I'll always tell, like, if there's somebody new, I'll always say, look, if you're not sure of anything, just ask. There's no stupid questions to ask. If you don't know, like, there's no point in trying to do something and then fucking it up, breaking some kit or something, because nobody should just feel stupid about asking a question, I don't think, because the only way you find that stuff out is from asking and watching and learning, and that's essentially what assisting is. You sort of do as you're told, and then if you don't understand why they're doing something, or maybe don't ask in the heat of the moment when the pressure's on, but maybe at the end when you're packing down, say, oh, well, why did we do that? And that's sort of, I guess that advice came from another assistant I worked with, and it's been pretty good advice, actually. So I sort of some advice I give a lot of people who are looking to assist or have assisted me over the years. Just no stupid questions, just ask.
Yeah, I think sometimes you've just got to watch other people, especially being creative. You're more often than not, we're visual people. If you're a photographer or you're a stylist, you're a visual person, retoucher. You're dealing in visual every day. So it is good to watch other people and see what they're doing, but also then going like, oh, why have you, like you say, why have you got a scrim there? Why have we got to pin this here? And it's the only way you can learn, isn't it? By asking lots of questions.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess the skill set is just like a massive jigsaw, and you ask these questions and you build those pieces up, and that becomes your skill set then, So yeah, there's no stupid questions. Everyone's got a different way of working, different way of doing things, and I think with an assistant, you should be being paid to be on set. Nobody should be working for free, really, but that's a whole other whole other wormhole to go down. But yeah, nobody should be working for free, so you're being paid to be there. So that's great, but also use it to your advantage as an assistant. Ask questions, be proactive, because eventually, that's all going to filter down into your own practice as a photographer or a stylist. Stylists sometimes have assistants as well, don't they? So I don't think it's specific to just photographers. I think set designers, whoever on set, whenever they've got somebody with them, I think they're obviously there for a reason as well. We obviously see something in somebody that we think, they obviously want to do this.
Yeah.
So, the fact that you're even there in the first place as an assistant, just make the best of the people who are working in the industry and doing it day in, day out. Just it should be a font of knowledge for you to tap into.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think as well, something that I always do when I'm on set, if we're going, say, on location, I'm happily carrying C stands out, everything else. You work as a team. There's not
Yeah.
that massive hierarchy like there used to be. It's very much like everyone helps muck
Yeah.
in, because there's going to come a day where I need some IKEA bags carrying because they're full of props and I can't carry everything like Buckaroo, you know? So you just have to, and then ask questions while you're doing it. And, you know, like, also, like I was saying to you, I'm relatively nosy, hence the reason for the podcast, I think, as well. But I like to ask photographers, I'm like, oh, what are you doing that for? Or like, oh, I've not seen that before. What's that? And I also then get questions back. People go, why are you doing this? Like, you know,
Yeah.
why have you put that there? Why have you put this here? And sometimes I can't answer because it's just, I just know that that's where it should go. I can't give a better answer than that.
I think that's an experience thing as well, though, isn't it? You know, that comes from being on set for years, and you know, let's face it, most of us have done things before. You get a brief and you think, oh yeah, I've done something similar to that. So, albeit we continually like you and I, we're working in the industry, but we continually are learning and refining our own practice as well. So, if a brief comes in that's similar to something you did 5 years ago, you're probably going to approach it quite differently. But it's always good to look back and think, okay, well, how did I do it then, and what's changed now? I always sort of get het up on what my work was like, or well, not what it was like, because I don't suppose it really matters. But I think it's when you've not found time to update your work and you know you're producing better work now. That's the thing. It's like, oh, well, I really need to, because you know, if you're constantly pushing and just, I don't want to say raising the bar, because raising the bar is that old cliche where it feels like it's a big jump.
Yeah.
There's no big jumps once you're working at a consistent level. Really, you're just nudging your way forward, I think, and slowly pushing those boundaries. But yeah, I mean, I think it's good to always be looking for that extra thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and also, like you were saying, I'm still learning off other stylists, and I see a stylist doing something, even if it's down to like pinning a pillowcase a different way to how I would have done it, and I think, oh, that's sitting really nice, actually, I'll pinch that, and they might go like, oh, actually, Shah's done that, I'll pinch that, and you just kind of, it's evolving, isn't it? You're just evolving all the time. Yeah.
And I think once you learn, or once you think you know it all and you stop wanting to learn is kind of when you're done. I think
Yeah.
you know you're just checked out. So I mean, touch wood, I'm not there yet. I always, you know, I love tinkering around and trying to push things, and even if it's just thinking about how I'm going to rig something, you know, I'm always just, even just in front of the TV, we'll be watching something and my wife will look at me, you know, watching this, are you? And it's because I'm just constantly just ticking things over and thinking, how am I going to do that? What am I going to do with this? How am I going to do this brief, you know?
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's a little bit more of a makeup of a still life photographer rather than, say, fashion, but I'm sure they think about different things than how am I going to rig a bottle that's meant to look like it's floating and liquid pouring out of it, you know?
Yeah.
They've probably got their own set of problems to worry about. I wouldn't know, I'm not a fashion photographer, but I don't know if that's a sad thing or not. But I generally think you have to be obsessed with what you do to work at a good level and be good at it. You have to be borderline obsessed with it and think about it all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's sad. I don't know if that's just me. I mean, I'd be interested to see if it is, you know, just like a certain type of photographer, maybe, you know, still lifers who are probably all slightly OCD and that think like that. But
It's very passionate, though, I think.
yeah,
It's a passion. It's almost like an obsessive passion, because, like you say, and then having a bottle floating and liquid pouring out of it, my head went, oh yeah, of course, I'd need this, I'd need this, I'd need this. And that's how my brain's just worked then just by you saying that. So I understand it from that level. And I think you're right. I think fashion photographers, obviously, it is slightly different. Their lighting slightly different, but maybe they're getting their model to pose in a different way, or they're thinking about props that a model can sit on and stuff. But it is a different, completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
And how did you realize still life was your passion?
I guess I'm kind of chilled out and quite patient. Although I can't, sometimes I'm not very patient, but that's, if you're 4 hours into something and it's not going the way you want, sometimes you have to just give it 10 minutes, walk away and come back to it. But really it was when I was, so I think I was in my first year at university. I shot a lot of landscape photography work before, which is kind of slow paced. I sort of realised that that's probably not gonna be the easiest way to pay the bills. I mean, don't get me wrong, people do it. People can do very well at it, but I think that's a hard part of the industry because it's basically just selling prints and workshops, and you're dealing with the public then as well. And I just don't really want to deal with the public. So
You and me both.
yeah, I mean, clients kind of okay sometimes, but the public definitely not. But no, a guy came in while I was in my first year at university, and we did a little workshop, I want to say, but it was less about lighting and more about fiddling with things in set. So, well, I guess it tried to get us to think about both, but obviously it was still life. Lighting, it takes bloody years to. I guess at that point it was just point a softbox at it, and that was kind of enough. But it was more about. I think, if I remember rightly, I think it was similar to what I just said about making a bottle suspended, but it was a jug with nails pouring out of it. Bit weird, but I think that was it. It was more about the approach to how you do that, and like I said, how you think about these things and how you're going to achieve that. So it's very much a mindset thing, and I think that's what kind of got me ticking with that. Really, is just the thought process about it. Obviously, lighting comes, pretty high up in still life, but that you can't learn that overnight. When you've got 8 or 9 lights going on set, each one's got a very specific little job they're doing. That you don't learn that quickly. That's a slow burn to learn that. But I think it was more the slow and considered pace and the thought process behind how you achieve making nails pour out of a jug. I think that was. So somebody certainly did that in university with us. I'm pretty sure that was that first workshop, which then I thought, yeah, this feels like something I could spend a bit of time doing.
Yeah, it's good. I found still life a little bit later. I've only really I was going to say knuckled down. I haven't knuckled down on it at all. Kind of gone off with my niche probably the last 5 years, 6 years maybe. But I used to do fashion, e-com, and still life, and and now I'm like, actually, my passion's in the still life side.
Well, I think that's a good thing you touch on there as well. Is your niche, and I think that's a good thing to want to have as a niche. As there's plenty of photographers who do a lot of this and a lot of that. Bit of a jack of all trades, I guess, to coin a phrase to it. But I think it's good to have a niche and be the guy who does this, or or the person who does this, and having quite a tight portfolio that reflects that, I think, is good as well. And although Burberry are never going to come to me and get me to shoot clothes on a model, it's never going to happen. But what they might do is they might come to me and ask me to shoot fragrance, still life stuff. So, and just because you've niched in, it doesn't mean the pool of clients is any smaller, because you've got huge fashion houses who still need still life stuff. You've got pharmaceutical companies, startups, food, drink. The opportunities outside of your niche are massive, but they're also huge within your niche as well. And once you realise that letting go of perhaps 80% of general photography and niching in, it's probably going to do you better in the long run in terms of your career as well. So
Yeah.
I think being brave and pushing for a niche is definitely worth doing. And I mean, I don't know how many people are sort of taught that in education. I think a lot of education is about a generalism, certainly in terms of creative. But I definitely think niching in and being really good at something is the way to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know, like, I'm now getting bookings because people have seen me prop stuff. They've seen the bright stuff that I've been doing. They know that what standard they're going to get. And I think, like, whilst I can still do the model stuff, and I have still done the odd job here and there when someone asks me, it's not my favourite thing to do. And whilst I'm still very capable of it, I'm still good at doing it, I'm at that point where I'm like, I know what I'm really good at and what I really enjoy doing. Give me a little, like, Santa's elf balancing on a stocking. I'm your girl. I can get that done right away. Not even just, he's dangling. But I think when it comes to model stuff, it's just, I find it harder.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think we've all got jobs and clients that we work for that maybe it's not work that we want to show or be known to do. Like, and I guess for me, that's just on white cutouts.
Yeah.
Which, I'm not going to load my website up full of cutouts. Like, I would rather be doing the interesting stuff. But everyone's got clients who give them work of a caliber that they're never going to show anyone else. But it's sort of about, I guess that's your bread and butter sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the basic stuff that around all the nice briefs and the more creative stuff, you've always got a bit of that going on that you can fall back on. And I think that's kind of how you build a business. Is you sort of work chasing these nicer jobs, but you've always got the reliable, steady, less creative bits and bobs going on in the background. I mean, I don't know if I should be saying that, but
No, I'm exactly the same.
I think everyone has it, and everyone wants to say, "Oh, look at this great job I shot for this, multinational." And the reality is, like, who's doing that week in, week out, really? Unless, I mean, some people are, but I guess in the busy middle of the commercial, which I would consider I'm in the busy middle. I'm not. I guess I'm not like, I've shot a few decent campaigns in my time, but I'm not churning out billboards or anything like that. Some guys are. There's some guys will shoot 5 or 6 billboard campaigns a year, and great. But again, I think I'm probably based in the wrong place for that. I'm not in London.
Yeah.
I don't have an agent, so. But that's all right, And I think once you're sort of happy with where you are, and once you sort of realize that you need those bits of bread and butter stuff, that's okay. Not every job you step foot in the studio is going to be something that you can plaster over Instagram and be like, yeah, look at me, look what I did, great. And that's just the reality of busy working creative people, and ultimately clients need boring stuff to function.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And actually, like, one of my favourite things is still life ecom. And I think people look at me weird. I'm one of the only stylists who's like, give me that gladiator shoe, give me that awful thing on a mannequin, I'll do it.
I think sometimes as well, like that sort of discipline is almost harder than putting in a set because you've got nothing else to make it look good. It has to look super good on white, maybe just a tiny bit of reflection, and that's all you've got. You've got a product and you've got to light it and get it the most out of that. There's nowhere to hide, essentially, is there?
No.
So, yeah, really, really good cutouts is a skill in itself, although it might be boring to look at, boring to put on your Instagram. People might, oh, well, it's just a toaster on white, whatever. Actually, doing it really well is probably where you'll find out where you're at as a photographer or a stylist is doing that sort of stuff because, like I say, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, and the skill level in doing something, like you say, like a toaster or something that's reflective as fuck, and then, you've got bits of trace balanced everywhere, and, and for me, like a gladiator sandal, might take me half an hour to get the bugger like where I want it, but, it's that skill level that some people think, I think still life is easy, and actually it's not.
I would argue it's probably the hardest discipline of photography.
Mm.
There's a lot of smoke and mirrors that goes on, and I think good still life photography should look easy.
Yeah.
That's part of the skill set of the people who put it together. Is that especially with sort of what you're saying about the sandal, it shouldn't look like it's being held up with fishing wire and all that. There shouldn't be any pulls on it where you can obviously see where that was. And that's a skill in itself, is getting, knowing how that should sit correctly. And yeah, I think it's definitely an underrated skill set.
Yeah. I think as well, you see, like I say, you see people come in and they're like, oh, it's just mannequin, it's easy, and then they realize the t-shirts they've been given aren't stitched straight, they're not the nicest fabric, the mannequin's wonky or fallen over.
Well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? Most product isn't designed to stand up to the scrutiny of being under the lights and in front of the lens. Realistically, like something you pick up off the shelf and you bottle of perfume or whatever, you pick it up, it's got some print on it, and to the eye it looks fine, but you shoot that in the studio, you get in close and that print is, not transferred 100% onto the bolt, so you've got to start rebuilding bits. It's stuff like that, and unless you're doing what we do, you probably just don't appreciate it, do you? Because, like I say, to the naked eye, looks fine. Oh, that'll do. Looks fine, And 90% of the client base are never going to notice.
No, but we will. And I think that's the thing. That's where we get a bit, I don't know about you, I get very obsessive about stuff, and then I have to relax and be like, okay, someone like Frank can come in and help me here. I don't have to spend 6 hours just on this one thing. It can be shot in maybe a couple of layers and someone else can help me build it.
Yeah. I think that's something you learn as well, isn't it? Is that knowing when to let go, or to get it to a point that is acceptable, and then maybe that that it just needs a bit of liquefy or something in post just to help sort something out, whatever. And I think that it just comes from working again. It's just that balance of, we've got 10 shots to do today, and we can't spend 3 hours on each one, as much as we would love to. Plus, it would mean we get 3 days' work, not one.
Yeah.
But it's that balance, isn't it, of balancing the budget, the timelines, the client expectations, and all of that. And it just comes down to experience, like you say. It's knowing when to draw a line under something and say, that's where I've got it to, and it just needs this. Or that could be comping as well in terms of photography as well. So I think it's understanding the process from both sides, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think like when I first started out in the industry, and there was retouchers, and I'd just sit with them for an hour and just be like, whoa, what you're doing is insane, because I've never really understood Photoshop from when I was like a teenager and it was first out, kind of thing. And so for me, I was like, oh, okay, I understand your limitations now. here's my limitations, and then there's photographers' limitations, and they all eventually can make line up and make the final image.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I mean, I still retouch stuff. Obviously, you know, if there's not a budget to pull somebody in or whatever, or you know, or even personal work, I'll retouch that. I'm probably quite good at retouching. Don't by any means say I'm a retoucher, but I think it's understanding what is achievable in post as well. When you're comping something, is to have that understanding is really good, and to know, you know, sometimes I'll make notes and be like, I've shot this. You need to use 50% of that on the final shot. So knowing that those subtleties are achievable in post, which maybe not quite achievable in camera. So
yeah, it's definitely it. What's your favourite thing to shoot?
that's a tricky one. I do a lot of drinks and beauty stuff, and I guess reflective stuff. I deal with a lot of, you know, glass, chromed stuff. So, but that, I guess, you know, that it when I started doing it, it was a challenge. And it just sort of becomes what you do, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, reflective stuff I kind of want to say as an overall. But yeah, beauty and drinks is kind of what I really enjoy doing. Shoot a little bit of food as well along the way. Generally, I say if it doesn't answer back, I'll shoot it. Is what I sort of generally say. But you know, then we end up using hand models for stuff as well. So yeah, and they answer back sometimes. So, but yeah, you know, I consider myself a still lifer. So yeah, product as a whole, but then within that is beauty and drinks is kind of what I really enjoy.
Yeah, I think drinks and like perfume and anything in a glass bottle is so hard to shoot and like just to capture how people want it. And like you say, with like drinks flowing out or um, beauty swatches, they
Yeah,
can be a beast within themselves.
yeah. I mean that, and again, that's sort of goes back to what we were saying earlier. Something so simple, but getting it right and to look so good that's a whole other. You know, you can spend a long time looking
Yeah.
at those swatches, and sometimes you end up building them out of 3 or 4 shots, taking a bit here, a bit there, because again, it's knowing where to draw the line and say, okay, well, we've done this 4 or 5 times, we've spent an hour on it, we probably need to move on, knowing that you can probably build it out of what you've already got. That, yeah, they're really tricky. Beauty swatches are really tricky.
Yeah, I find them hard still. Like sometimes you've just got to go in with conviction and
Yeah,
actually that's your best
yeah.
shot. But sometimes you're like, oh,
The worse it is, generally, I think. If you go in cautious and like, oh, then
yeah,
it's probably you probably fucked from the start with that one.
yeah, I agree. And
So
sometimes it's like you're trying to put the beauty swatch in, or you're putting it on a bit of clear
acetate.
acetate, that's a word, and then you slide it in, and it's like not quite in the right place, and then there's just it's definitely a challenge. That's a hold your breath day, one of those where you're like,
Yeah, there's got to be a better way of doing it on acetate than on acetate as well, but there's not really, is there? But
no.
it's just a bloody dust magnet, that stuff as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And like you can't then put a swatch on a bit of paper because heaven forbid if you move it on a bit of Colorama, you've fucked the bit of Colorama because it's often oily or like
Yeah,
wet.
but you have to have it on that so you can scoot it
Yeah,
around without,
yeah,
like say, messing the entire shot up.
yeah,
Especially if you've invested 50 minutes into putting all the products out, lighting those, and the last thing to go in is the swatches,
yeah.
then, it's a start again job, isn't it, really? But yeah, I really enjoy that sort of stuff. But yeah, like you say, the swatch stuff is a whole other
Yeah.
art form in itself.
Yeah, it really is. I've seen a couple of stylists who are really good at it, and I think like they've nailed it, like they've just top of their game. And then I look at it and I think, oh fuck, this is just going to go everywhere. I'm going to end up covered in every part of this, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's a really, really good London based stylists who I've worked with for a couple of projects here and there who are really, really good at that sort of stuff. But I guess, it's like anything. That's their niche.
Yeah.
That's what they've niched in on, and they've probably spent a small fortune buying it and testing it, and getting themselves to the point where they're able to just say, well, that's what I do.
Yeah.
And then become that go-to person,
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of what we were saying earlier.
Yeah. So have you worked for any other studios, or did you just go straight into being self-employed?
Yeah, straight into being self-employed. It was a self-employed assistant, so just get pulled in onto jobs, freelancing. And then just sort of rolled from there, and then, assisting turned into shooting slowly, I might add. That's a very slow transition, because if you're a busy assistant, then you've got to find time to shoot personal work, and then the personal work will bring in the paid photography work. So it's always the balance of the three things, I think, is managing your time, getting paid 5 days a week, doing the assisting, spending your weekends shooting spec work and personal work, and then trying to pick up the photography jobs around the assisting. That it's quite a hard little triangle to work in. That I did enjoy that process though, and it does get to a point where you think, I'm not sure I can assist anymore because I need to be available. And then you do sort of find yourself sort of stepping off the edge of a cliff, as it were. But I wouldn't advise people just to get one job and, I'm not going to assist anymore. It's definitely not that. I think it took me 5 or 6 years of just, and it's a hard grind, that is, but it's worth it. It is worth it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you have that. You've got to find that balance, and if you're passionate about it, it will come. You'll enjoy doing all of that process.
Yeah, I mean, personal work in those sort of early days, it's just your hobby, essentially. It's what you enjoy. And as long as you're seeing yourself improving, and you should be, because like I say, if you're assisting, you're learning off other people. So, I spent a lot of time, luckily for me, when I was assisting down in Bristol a lot, a couple of the guys who I assisted would let me in the studio at weekends. And let me use their kit and stuff. And that's another thing, is building up all your own equipment. It takes so long. And then I've paid that forward with assistants I've used. I've let them in the studio at weekends and they've used my kit and stuff, because it is so hard to find a studio space. You either end up hiring it, and then if you haven't got the kit to do it, you've hired a studio space and you haven't got the kit. So yeah, I do try and pay that forward, because I was really lucky with Mike and James down in Bristol, who I worked for both of them for a long time, and then I ended up moving into the studio with them both anyway. So, and then I was in there for a good 4 years, I suppose, with those guys, maybe 5. So I had a really good run with those guys. But I owe a lot to them, and I'm forever indebted, really, for that leg up that they gave me. And it's, like I say, I always try and pay it forward, but it's so hard to get started. It's so hard to find momentum, find a space, find the kit.
Yeah.
If you want to shoot beauty product, if that's what you want to do, you've got to go out and buy it. And once you've opened the perfumes, you can't return them. Or unless you're really, crafty with the cellophane they're in. But it is a grind, but you should be under no illusion, I don't think, when you come into this industry, that it is hard work. But once you get to that point that people are coming to you, for jobs, it's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, I think it's nice. Like now, I'm like I was saying to you earlier, I'm getting people coming to me for books or like for propping cookbooks or other things, and they've seen the props I can do, and you go like, oh, sweet. It's taken me. Someone asked me how long I've been freelance the other day, and I was like, I think it's been 10 years, but I think I've been styling for like 14 or something ridiculous. So it's taken me that long to get to that point. And it's the graft. I think also we're in a society where everything's instant. You can go on Amazon and order whatever the fuck you want and it comes next day.
It wasn't though, was it?
No.
When you and I were starting out, was Amazon a thing? No, I don't think it was. But you had to get off your backside. You had to be proactive and go and get the stuff and do, whereas like you say now, it's a little bit easier, but you're still going to have the drive and the passion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you've just got to be in it for the long game. That sounds so cliche, but if you really are driven and you're really passionate about it, you've got to think every day I've got to do something. I think it was an interview I watched with Jimmy Carr and Russell Howard on his new podcast. And Jimmy Carr was saying that every day he's doing something for future him. And I was like, that is so right. That's kind of, if you do, even if it's a tiny thing, like maybe walk an extra 10 minutes on your walk, or you find something else creative to do, or you're reading an extra chapter in your book or whatever. And that's how I've seen my career. Like every time I've done a little step that's got me to this point where I am now. And I never would have thought I would be here. I thought I'd still be dressing mannequins in a studio full time somewhere else. And
it's certainly not, it's definitely not an instant thing, but like you say, it's an accumulative thing, isn't it? You're just building and building and building. And I think I touched on that earlier where, you don't take these great jumps forward. You're just slowly edging your way forward. But I guess there are probably notable points in everyone's career where they can look back and say, yeah, okay, well, it changed when I did this. And those are the real milestones, I think, to look back on. But every day you should, just keep hacking away at it, and you'll get there.
Yeah, yeah, will eventually. I've got one final question for you, and it's very open-ended, so you answer how you see fit. But what inspires you?
What inspires me? I mean, I think that sort of changed a little bit. I guess early on would be my surroundings or anything like a news story or something like that. And then I would think about how can I visualize that, or how can I make something tongue in cheek out of something like that. And that's sort of where I started with Still Life. Was quite a lot of tongue in cheek stuff. And I think now when you're working for clients, I think it's sort of a slightly different beast. But I still, the world around me, like I said, the project I've done recently with just stuff out the garden, that was just purely down to just seeing stuff blowing in the wind and just, fluttering around. So, I mean, it's just a multitude of things. I don't think any one thing can inspire anyone, but it's all part of your life experience. And I guess you're a funnel. So you take it all in and then you distill it down into this little vision, which is the way you see things and the way you see the world. So, I mean, I don't want to say one thing. I mean, looking at other photographers' work is obviously a great source of inspiration, though it is hard not to think, oh, well, I wish I'd have done that sometimes as well. So I think that is a little bit of a double-edged sword. But I think really it's just, if you can look at your own life experiences and maybe distill that into your own work somehow, although that can be very difficult when working for a client. So I think the best the best stuff you create probably should be your personal work, and that should be drawn from all the inspirations from your life, really. So I kind of want to say that in a bit of a cliche way with personal work, but I haven't found much time to do much personal work recently. So, but yeah, I mean, certainly what got me started was that sort of, tongue-in-cheek look at stuff. And I've got a few little bits of personal work planned, which I kind of want to get back to that a little bit, with some sort of playful observations and stuff like that. So, I've sort of been a bit conscious that the past sort of 4 or 5 years has been very much business focused, I guess, to put it, answering briefs, getting paid, which we all need to do, and we all need to make a living. But I do want to get back to that sort of little bit of a playful nature, which I kind of started off with, I think. So
yeah, I think we all do, don't we? And then we hit a point where we're like, oh shit, we need to pay for our bills. And then it comes back round again where you can take the time and
I think work is play, then you've won. That's the life lottery, isn't it? You've won.
Yeah.
Like, we're making a living doing this, and it feels like we're just playing around. Great. So, that's... I can't think of anything worse than just being stuck in a drab office doing, I don't know, whatever these people do in drab offices. I can't think of anything worse, because I've never had that. I've never felt shackled to a desk, as it were. I've always had, creativity around me in my work, and that's something that I think you can't really put a price on that.
No, I agree.
If you enjoy creativity, some people do, but for us, definitely.
Yeah, I agree with you. I couldn't think of anything worse than going back to doing retail and being on the floor all day with like customers. Ugh.
Yeah, again, no thanks.
Yeah, hard pass. Thank you.
Not for me, that one.
Well, thank you so much for chatting to me today. I've really enjoyed speaking to a fellow passionate still lifer, and it has been so nice to have you on.
Thanks very much. Been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!